Aloha Kako, and welcome to another edition of the Kanaka Express. I'm Kali Kumopak, your host for tonight, and we have a special edition that I'm very, very excited to present to you because we're going to be showing you a video that of our clients that from Laulima that were represented by Attorney Dexter Kayama, who represented them as individuals as they were involved in foreclosures, and Dexter Kayama represented them as individual clients. And Dexter is not an attorney for Laulima, and he was retained on an individual basis by these clients. And there was a press conference that was held on March 9th. And this was last week. And this press conference talked about the criminal complaints that were filed against judges on the island of Hawaii. And I'd like to show you the press conference because I think there's going to be a lot of information that came out of this press conference. And more so, it also was able to provide additional information as well as clarify things that came out of the article for the Hawaii Tribune Herald just a couple of days prior to the press conference, and where Deputy Police Chief Marshal Kanihailua said some things that I think Attorney Dexter Kayama was able to clarify. So with that said, I'd like to go ahead and show you the press conference. It's going to run about 35 minutes. And after the press conference and the video that we're going to show you, I'd like to invite Dr. Keanu Sai on as our expert consultant. And we're going to be discussing and going through what was said and getting his manao about everything that was talked about at the press conference. So get your popcorn, your favorite brew, favorite drink, and watch this press conference.
I'm sitting here with my clients, and my clients have authorized me to speak on their behalf about matters dealing with the commission of war crimes and the commission of felonies by judges in the Third Circuit Court of the state of Hawaii. My clients have been deprived of a fair and regular trial, which is afforded to them under the Geneva Convention. Let me explain to you a little bit about what that means. Hawaii continues as an illegal occupied nation by the United States in violation of international and U.S. constitutional law. Because of that illegal occupation and the fact that there is no treaty of annexation, the United States does not legally exist here in the Kingdom of Hawaii. The courts, therefore, have been unlawfully constituted, and the retention of jurisdiction over matters, and in particular with my clients over matters concerning foreclosure, has been a violation of the Geneva Convention, as well as has been the commission of felonies under U.S. law, that being Title 18, Section 2441. A little bit of background. In these cases, my clients were subject to foreclosure proceedings. And in the foreclosure proceedings, banks and their attorneys brought complaints to foreclose upon the homes of my clients. On behalf of my clients, I was retained at that time to dismiss the complaints that were filed because the courts lacked subject matter jurisdiction. In the proceedings, I filed motions on their behalf and provided the evidence to prove not only that the Kingdom of Hawaii continues to exist, but that there were also existing treaties between the Hawaiian Kingdom and the United States that the United States continued to be in violation of. Because of these existing treaties, and because of the fact that the United States has no treaty of annexations, I provided additional evidence to the courts that they could not retain jurisdiction over these matters. and that as a court they were unlawfully constituted, and their retention of jurisdiction would be in fact a violation of international law and the commission of felonies under U.S. law. What has happened is that the courts have continued to retain jurisdiction in violation of the laws, and on my client's behalf I was authorized to file complaints with the international courts as well as protests and demands with the United States Pacific Command, demanding that the U.S. Pacific Command investigate the commission of these felonies, and also asking the international courts, should the Pacific Command fail in their obligation to investigate and bring these claims to justice, that the International Criminal Court steps in. I wish to provide to Mr. Corrigan a copy of the letter from the International Criminal Court in The Hague, Netherlands, and I will provide a copy of that letter to him at the conclusion of this press conference. It's dated March 4th, 2013, from the International Criminal Courts, acknowledging my receipt, their receipt, of the complaints for war crimes that we filed against the judges and against the banks and the attorneys prosecuting or attempting to prosecute their complaints against my clients. What's significant about the acknowledgement of my complaints by the ICC is that by acknowledging receipt of these complaints and the fact that they are in fact continuing their monitoring and ultimate investigation of the complaints, the ICC has acknowledged the independent state of Hawaii. And if Hawaii was not or did not continue to be an independent nation, an independent state, the ICC could not have acknowledged the receipt of these complaints without in fact infringing on the sovereignty of the United States. So just to be clear, the International Criminal Courts have acknowledged the existence of the independent Kingdom of Hawaii, independent state of Hawaii, and that the United States has no jurisdiction over these islands. What's also important for me to disclose is that in August of 2012, the acting government for the Hawaiian Kingdom lodged a protest and demand with the United Nations calling for the end of the prolonged occupation of the Hawaiian Kingdom. Prolonged occupation of the Hawaiian Kingdom. That protest and demand was also acknowledged and received by the United Nations General Assembly and the President of the United Nations. Once again, that acknowledgement and receipt could not have been received by the United Nations if they did not in fact recognize the independent state of Hawaii. In December of 2012, and I believe February of 2013, the acting government also lodged with the United Nations a letter of accession to the ICC, the International Criminal Court, as well as a letter of accession to the Geneva Convention. The significance of those letters of accession, one was that it was received again, acknowledging the independence of the Hawaiian Kingdom, and two, it was at that point that the International Criminal Court was able to assert jurisdiction over these criminal complaints that have been filed by my clients, as well as recognize that my clients in fact are protected people, citizens under the Geneva Convention. Now, what's important for me to disclose is that after filing of these war crime complaints with both the ICC and the protests and demands with the Geneva with the U.S. Pacific Command, my clients filed criminal complaint reports with the Hawaii County Police Department and with Officer Leland Pa. Now, it's important that Officer Pa, in fact, did receive these complaints, did assign all of these complaints criminal numbers, and did begin preliminary criminal investigation into these complaints. I also wish to provide Mr. Corrigan, upon conclusion of this press conference, a letter that I provided to Detective Derek Morimoto, dated April 14, 2013. He is currently, or at last knowledge, was the current detective continuing the investigation of these criminal complaints. As a little bit of background, each of my clients on their own filed the complaints with Officer Pa, complaining that they had been deprived of a fair and regular trial in violation of the Geneva Convention and a felony under U.S. law. Officer Pa took these complaints again, assigned criminal numbers, and did the investigation. Shortly after his initial preliminary investigations, Officer Pa was placed on leave without pay. And we believe as a direct result of his taking and assigning the criminal complaint numbers to these complaints from my clients. It's significant because we believe, and my clients believe, and a main reason for holding this press conference is that actions were being taken that seems to indicate an effort to thwart the criminal investigations into these complaints. Also, by placing Officer Pa on leave without pay, administrative leave without pay, my clients also believe and felt that efforts were being made to send a clear message to any police officer who sought to take these complaints, which is their duty under law to do, but it was an effort to intimidate officers from also taking, receiving, and assigning criminal complaint numbers to these complaints. I'm happy to say that Officer Pa, of course, has gone through the administration process or is continuing his administration process, and I think he has the support of his union. I believe, and I just believe, upon information and belief, I believe Officer Pa has been reinstated, although his administrative situation has still not yet been resolved. That is why sometime in early April, Detective Morimoto was reassigned these criminal complaints and was the person in charge with continuing the investigation. This letter to Officer Morimoto explains in depth the background and the legal basis for the criminal complaints, as I mentioned earlier, the war crimes and the commission of felonies. But it also instructs Officer Morimoto that on completion of their initial investigations, that it should be properly routed to United States Pacific Command for the completion of that investigation and the pursuit of prosecution if necessary to bring this matter to justice. I've recently read the press release from the Hawaii County Police Department, as well as an article in the Hawaii Tribune Herald that was dated today, March 9th, about their response to my press release. I guess I am happy to say that it is being brought to the public's attention because I think that's important. That's the first thing that's important. I think public awareness of this important issue is paramount, not only for providing the public with the proper information, what's out there, but also for the protection of my clients and their claims for the criminal complaints. I would like to address what I believe is some misstatements or some inaccuracies about the article. I believe it is Assistant Police Chief, and forgive me.
Kani Hailua.
Yes. What is his name? Marshal Kani Hailua, that indicated that they were not conducting any investigation into the complaints. And in fact, what they've done is that they forwarded these complaints to the FBI, and if the FBI conducts its investigation, that's up to them. I don't know Assistant Chief Kani Hailua, so I've never, and I haven't spoken to him, so I'm not sure what information that he is aware of or been privy to. I do believe that his statement, though, it conflicts with information that we have and statements that have been made by Detective Morimoto to some of my clients, as well as direct correspondence I have had with Detective Morimoto. And in fact, Detective Morimoto has indicated to some of my clients and myself that he was conducting an investigation at the time. Another inaccuracy I'd like to correct with the article is Kani Hailua's statement that it was forwarded to the FBI. In my letter to Detective Morimoto dated April 14, 2013, I provided the legal basis and the instructions to Morimoto that it should properly be rerouted once the initial investigation is completed to the U.S. Pacific Command. And the reason for that is simply this. The FBI is part of the Department of Justice, and the Department of Justice's jurisdiction is limited to its territorial borders, and that is the United States. Because Hawaii is not part of the United States, the FBI should not have jurisdiction over this investigation. Because we are currently occupied by the United States and the military is here, the proper authority to conduct and complete the investigation is the U.S. Pacific Command. And the proper authority to, in fact, not after completion of an investigation, but to prosecute the perpetrators would be also the U.S. Pacific Command's authority. Now, the letter that I sent to Detective Morimoto was also copied to the International Criminal Courts, the Geneva, the UN, the United Nations, as well as the U.S. Pacific Command. And what's important with that is that while the International Criminal Courts has jurisdiction over the commission of war crimes, they are in fact a court of last resort. So what that means is that they first will give the opportunity to the U.S. Pacific Command to conduct its proper investigation and to prosecute if the evidence proves that it should. By my notifying and keeping the ICC apprised of every step of this, every part of this investigation, what I am doing, of course, is making sure that should the Pacific Command or should any proper authority fail to complete its investigation and prosecute or bring this matter to justice, I can then invoke the jurisdiction of the ICC because of the failure of the Pacific Command to do its job. It is clear Hawaii continues to be illegally occupied. The United States has usurped that occupation in violation of treaties existing between the Hawaiian Kingdom and the United States, in violation of international law, as well as in violation of the U.S.'s own Constitution. Again, what's undisputed is that there is no treaty of annexation. And what's clear is that without a treaty of annexation, any congressional enactment, including the enactment for the territory of the state of Hawaii and the enactment for the territory of Hawaii and the Statehood Act, are internal legislations that have no force and effect beyond the U.S. territory. As a result of this, again, it has been my client's position that these courts have no jurisdiction over matters concerning land. And these courts have no jurisdiction